Hello and welcome to another episode of In My Podcast Era, a podcast where I chat to all my favorite creators about their eras past, present, and future. And on this episode, I'm joined by two very special guests. They're legends in the Australian drag community. Not only do they perform on a regular basis, they've toured their own show, they make their own content, throw their own events, host podcasts, direct, edit, record, shoot their own music videos, and a former Drag Race Down Under contestants. It is truly an honor to have both of you here. Simone and Etcetera Etcetera. Welcome!
Hello. Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I mean, it's the afternoon, but it's morning for us today.
Yeah, I feel like a drag queen's morning starts at any point after 1 p.m. and it can end probably around 8 or 9 in the evening.
What is this time giving you? Is it like 7 a.m.-ish? Or?
Oh, about 9. We've clocked
That's
in.
9.
We've
Okay,
clocked
okay.
in, you know?
You've had your morning coffee.
Yeah.
It's before the crack of dawn, but it's after dawn's crack.
You guys have just come off the back of Drag Expo, which
Yes.
was a weekend where you got to meet the fans, connect with other drag race queens, drag performers. How was that all for you?
Yeah, it's always great to meet all the drag fans out there because, believe it or not, we actually do like drag.
I mean, you couldn't tell looking at us, but yeah, we do.
Yeah, so it's nice to be in a space where everyone enjoys and loves and celebrates the same thing. And it was really good too because, you know, we often work in so many over 18 venues. All of the drag fans that are in their teens with their mums and their families get to come and get to find a space where they're loved, they're seen, and they feel valid, you know? So it's good.
Yeah, and it's also a much more accessible place for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of nightclubs aren't very accessible for people with disabilities or people who are neurodivergent. And so I had a lot of people coming through that are like, I just don't feel comfortable or safe coming to a club. And so coming here is a nicer option. So it was nice to meet, I suppose, just a wider cross section of fans, younger, older. It just gives us more of a chance to connect with the entirety of the people that love what we do, not just the ones that go out to clubs and drink and party.
Yeah, I think in venues and when you're performing, it can often be a lot more one-sided. You're giving them a lot and yes, they take that away and process it, but it's a lot more two-sided. You get to find out more about them. You get to find out what they love. You get to find out their story, and it makes it all a bit more special and a bit more unique to every single, you know, interaction.
Yeah, and you're there specifically to meet them. You know, in a club, you're, you know, working, you're hosting, you're trying to get bar sales through by getting your performance over so they can keep serving drinks. I don't know, there's a lot of things to consider in that environment, but when you're at something like Drag Expo, you're just there to have those interactions. So you can really focus in on, I suppose, not giving people bang for their buck, because I hate it to seem transactional like that, but it's really giving people the experience that they deserve when they're spending the time to come out and support you, buy your merch, you know. I really hate when people do meet and greets and they're like, photo, next. And it's like, I get it when you're really busy, but there's always time to have like a moment of genuine human connection with people that are supporting.
Literally, and it's like so important. I think for a lot of, you know, and we'll kind of go into this and delve into this a little bit more later. It's really important to listen and be receptive to your audience because as a creator, you're there not for them, but they're the consumer, they're the people tapping into your product.
I agree to a point though, because I don't ever want to tailor what I'm doing creatively for someone. Sure, I can, you know, pick a showtime that'll work for people, or I can pick certain things, but I never want to be trapped in being like, well, what do they want? What do they want? Because the reason they liked us in the first place is because we were ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to be like, oh, you know, it ends up being this machine where it's like, well, you know, what are they wanting? Blah, blah, blah. And I've stepped away from that recently, and I've just been doing stuff that I enjoy, and I feel a lot happier to step away from being like, oh, I've got to get the numbers up. I've got to get this. Or what are they liking? I can't think for them. It's like, just go back to what you do and what you love. And that's why they're there in the first place.
When was it a point where you're like, something's going to change?
I mean, it's definitely been the last like 6 to 12 months because you ride the wave of Drag Race where everyone's just lapping up whatever you're doing. They're like, wow, camp. And then personally, I've seen obviously a step back at the moment where it's like, okay, I'm not on TV anymore. So, you know, your whole engagement changes and everything and you're trying to think ahead. But it just was really like suffocating for me. So I was like, nah, I'll just do what I want to do. It just felt good.
Yeah, and I think it's also less so a mindset change, but maybe even like changing your workload or your emotional load as a performer or an artist. Sorry, there's like an wild animal outside trying to get in. It's my debt collector. Like, I haven't paid off this week and they're coming to get me. But there is an emotional workload that you have to scale back on, where you really care when you are an artist about whether or not people like you. Not even like whether they like your work or whether what you're doing is profitable or marketable or the product is good. It's just, you sometimes go, is what I'm saying even important? Does anyone care? Like, do people look at me and go, I like what you do, I like you? And I think when you've been on TV and you've had, this intense love bombing experience from thousands of fans being like, you're my favorite person, I got you tattooed on my arm, like, I named my child after you. And you have all of those horrible, nasty voices being like, we hate you, I'm going to kill your dad, all those kind of things. And then it all kind of goes away. It's really hard to remember the nice things, but you remember the negative things. And so you're constantly chasing the nice things again because you remember how good it felt. So I think it's that emotional workload of trying to like balance the stuff you're used to from that really intense engagement experience, and then being like, okay, now who's talking if it's just me sitting here and I don't have that wall of engagement coming at me anymore.
I want to dive into that a little bit later because I have some more questions about that. But I normally start off each episode of the podcast with asking both of you, asking my guest a question. And I'll start with Etcetera. What era are you currently in, and what have you had to do to prepare for that?
I think I'm in my goofy era at the moment. A shout out to Spice, who was just on the most recent season of Drag Race. But I think I've spent so much time focusing on having to be perfect. And I also think in Australia, to be taken seriously in a lot of industries like fashion and beauty and editorial and even marketing and ad campaigns, you have to present, I think, sometimes as like a robotic, immobile, perfect creator. And I realized it was actually stifling my expression. My audience wasn't getting fed the content that they actually enjoyed from me in the first place, which was me being a little bit more loose and just happy to play around and have fun with my art. And I think on the weekend at Drag Expo, when I dressed up as a giant caterpillar, I had so many, I just had great responses from people, and people genuinely said things like, this is why I'm following you. Like, I love this stuff.
It's
like
silly.
When you're releasing Caterpillar, like, I don't know, people like really connected to just something silly that I threw out there that I was like, this feels like more me. And I didn't worry about whether it was like snatched or fierce or like slay, or whether people would be like, that's so like cool. I'm just done with being cool. Yeah. I like what you're saying. I'm just back to being a little bit silly and goofy. I think that's my era, silly and goofy era.
And I think you've proven, like, when you step into your fashion, like there's queens that, can really dress up and all that, but you like deliver looks. Like, after coming out of Fashion Week, like,
but you know what it is drag queens have always inhabited those spaces. We always have, and not necessarily because they're trying to be there, because designers have taken inspiration from those drag queens and invited them along. You look at trans icons like Amanda Lepore, she's at every major fashion launch in the world, but she's not dressed in, designer brands. She's dressed in costumes made for her look, and the brands invite her because they're inspired by her. So when people like say, oh yeah, you're in the fashion scene, you're doing this, I'm like, well, no, I would like to think that I'm on mood boards, and that's my aspiration is to be put on mood boards, and for designers and brands to be like, we love visually what's coming out of Etcetera's brain because I'm creating it from inside here. I'm not like
letting the external.
I'm not letting it. Yeah. And it was nice to be styled for Fashion Week. I enjoyed that. But I also love doing stuff like this where I head to toe, I make something myself and go, this is my world. This is my reference point. And if someone else wants to take inspiration from that, be my guest.
No.
Put me on the mood board.
Do.
Does that actually do anything? I was like, very high tech. Anyways.
And what about you? Like, what's your current era? How have you prepared for it? How are you experiencing it?
Yeah, my current era, I don't know the right terminology for it, but I'm just calling it like teenage dream era, not in the Katy Perry vibe, but as in I as someone growing up, regressed away from all the things that I enjoyed as a teenager because I felt like I needed to fit in within the queer community and act a certain way and look a certain way. And then on top of that, when I started doing drag, I started really like out there creatively, but then my drag really got pigeonholed into what I called like corporate glamour, which was like pink dress, pink wig, big boa, and like I Will Survive. I performed I Will Survive like 3 million times for the last like 10 years. And I think I was always too scared to, while I was being creative with makeup and looks and everything, when it came to actually my performances and getting out there, I was really hesitant to lean into the things that I really liked. So I didn't. And what I've done in the last like 6 to 12 months is gone back to punk, gone back to emo, gone back to like goth, like bats, skulls, all the stuff that I've really enjoyed as a teenager that made me so happy. I'm now going back and being like, no, I can be who I want to be.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to be, clean cut bodybuilding like a drag queen who does I Will Survive. I can be a weird one with blue hair, covered in tattoos and too much black. Love it. And I took a risk on one show. It was like a Mardi Gras show that I did and came out in full spikes and punk and this and that. And everyone loved it. And I was like, oh, maybe I can do another one. Maybe I can do another one. And now it's just all I like to do, I can be pretty sometimes.
Yeah.
Pretty ugly.
Yeah.
And I guess going back to Drag Race, there was like a lot to deal with on your season, which we're not going to really get into.
We're still dealing with it.
We're tired. Yeah. It's really incredible seeing you guys still stick at what you do. But you guys have done so much and made so much noise for yourselves. But I think Australia's industry, like we don't have like things like fashion photo review, XYZ and stuff when you come out of the show. And the media opportunities here are very limited. And then when it comes to championing yourself, you really need to make those opportunities. And I think you two have done it really well. But when was like the moment that switched on and you were like, it's time, bitch, let's go?
Well, the thing is, people don't realize that the people that didn't know us before we were on Drag Race, we are all the people that have already been doing that for years and years and years and years. It's not a new mindset. We have been entrepreneurs. We've been working so hard to be seen, to be heard, and to create opportunities for others for years. And that's why we were asked to do season 1 of Drag Race, because we were already out there making noise. So it was easy for them to find us and be like, oh, we want you. So it was a natural progression for us once we came off to continue to do that because we're hungry, we're fighters, and we love drag. Whereas now that we're moving through to other seasons, there's lots of other drag queens. I think some of them watch what happened to us and be like, oh, I'll get on the season and then this will happen and this will happen and this will happen. And nothing's happened. And they're like, well, we were doing the work and we haven't stopped doing the work.
I think a lot of people also look at something like Drag Race and they're like, that's going to be the peak of my career. And that's the worst mentality you can have. Like I looked at it as just a door opening to like a different path where I could get to places I wasn't capable of getting. It was like unlocking a padlock on a big door full of a warehouse of tools or things that I could use. It wasn't like the end goal. And I think a lot of people don't see it as a tool and they see it as something that, like you said, opportunities will be handed to them. They can ride the wave. They can just accept it as what it is. But I think something Art and I have always been good at is seeing opportunities for their potential. And we'll have an opportunity that everyone else looks over and goes, oh, I'm not sure. But our brains go, no, there's a way we can make this work, and so we put so, and this is, we're just going to be candid. We put so much of our own money and our own time and our own effort into cultivating drag culture, cultivating the health and wealth of the drag scene here. When we have a successful show, it means other drag queens can have successful shows because the audience is being fed and trained to appreciate good quality drag. So I think all drag queens that work really hard post the show and put in that effort and energy themselves, we're all trying to contribute to an economy and an industry where everyone does that. So when people don't, it's like, well, sure, you're letting yourself down, but you're also letting everyone else that's trying to lift everyone up together down. We're all trying to make an industry out of this.
I've had this conversation with Maxi, who is another queen from Down Under, season 1, who has been working for many, many years. And I first saw her on a Woolworths campaign walking through, like looking at the fruit aisle. And I was like, who is this drag queen? So she's been doing the same thing that we've been doing for years. And we were speaking about it. She's like, Drag Race didn't open doors for us. It just presented some new doors for us to knock on. And that was it. The doors aren't open. You're still there being like, hello.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are too scared to knock. And in this industry, especially when you're trailblazing and creating opportunities that haven't been done before, you have to do a lot of thinking and forward planning for people that haven't even had the idea. Like a lot of my successes have been from me presenting ideas that they hadn't even thought of, me knocking on the door and being like, hey, I know you haven't done this before, but what about this? And, 90% of the time they go, ew. But sometimes they're like, oh, actually, that could work. Come
and
in.
that's what you have to hang out for, like those like little moments. It's scary. I think people like the rejection. It's really hard. Like unless you're self-assured or you have a good community, it's really hard for young creators, I guess, to navigate that because you shoot your shot, right? You send the email, you do whatever, you don't hear back from them. The way you approach that from there is either you take it personally and they don't like your art. They like you. Not your art.
No, or they just have no taste. That's it. It's like
not many people like my art.
But yeah, you can either take it personally, you can take it as a sign that this isn't something you should be doing, or you just keep fucking trying and keep knocking. And even though it's come so naturally to you, like that's a huge skill and a tool, like that resilience. How do you like stay grounded or like push yourself forward through that? Like what's the internal narrative when you first started noticing that, okay, like, shit, I really need to make it happen here for me.
This is the way my brain is wired. I've been like this since I was a little kid. I remember my favorite story that my mum says is that in kindergarten, the teacher pulled her over and said, Jack is too hard on himself. He's getting really upset because Ben can read and he can't, and he hasn't worked it out yet. And you need to let him know, like, not to have such high expectations. And mum has always said to me, she's like, there's nothing wrong with having high expectations because it gives you drive. And that's just where it's at. I'm just always like, all right, that's not going to work. Let's do this. Let's try this. I'm hardwired to be hungry and to, want to go out there and do things. Being like centered and strong and happy in what you're doing with yourself and being like, well, if you don't like it, that's fine. Someone else will. But I mean, I can say that, but I'm still in the DMs with this one being like, I think everyone hates me at the moment. And it's all natural,
It's also about learning, I think, to take no for an answer. I know everyone says, don't take no for an answer, but sometimes you've got to actually listen to what's coming back your way and what your gut feeling is. And there's been so many times where I've thought I was fighting some specific battle with my work or my creative life. And I was just like, I've got to get this thing. And then I was ignoring every single sign that the actual goal that I should be chasing was just adjacent to that. Right. So it's about listening to the universe and also what your close collaborators and your friends and the people that really enjoy your work are telling to you. And, I think not having tunnel vision on those no's and those rejections and those failures, and more so just actually hearing why that's the case. Because a lot of people hear the no and they go, well, it's a dead end. For me, that's a learning opportunity because hearing that no teaches me what to do next time to make sure it's not a no. I go, why did they say no?
Well, that's the thing is you learn from it. A lot of the successes I've had have been where I've like gone into a meeting and been like, great, okay. And they're like, oh, we don't really like it because of this reason. And they'll just tell you why, and then you change it and you go to the next person who does the same thing. And then they're like, oh, I love that idea. I'm like, yeah, thanks, babe.
And it's like rejection is a free workshopping. Like
it literally is.
It's free
it
feedback.
Is.
Yeah. And no, it is.
It is.
And so, and this is the thing that both of us do. We always tend to pitch things to multiple, say for example, industry secret, say we're looking for say we're looking for a makeup brand to sponsor an event, right? Yeah. We're going to reach out to a bunch of makeup brands that we think, these are people that we'd love to work with, but we always have one or two that we're like, these are our dream brands. These are ones that really represent who we are. And they're the ones that we invest the most time and energy in, but we'll still pitch to other people because we want them to come back with feedback that we can take on board to refine the idea for the top tier brands in our minds. It's like
almost like a trial, like, like a trial version on a game. Just go through, you have a little play, go, I've learnt the ropes. And then you can go in there and like
now.
Yeah, and so
Killer
then the next
levels.
time you're pitching an event and you've got, say your first one you pitched for a smaller brand and they gave you feedback and you're like, okay, I'm getting more used to this experience. The next time you pitch, you can go for one of those bigger brands and be more confident because you've gone through those steps. We find very often we're the first drag queens that brands have ever worked with.
Yep.
Yeah, and we walk in the room and they don't know how to talk to us, how to look at us. They're like, how long do you need to get ready? 10 minutes?
Yeah.
6 hours? Do you need a makeup artist? What do you need? We can fly in a freezer. Like they're just like, they have no idea. So we have to teach them. But in doing that, we have to teach ourselves how to operate in the space with people that have no idea what we do.
People that aren't previously haven't been like overly championed in Australia, we not only have to like work, but then we also have to figure out to communicate how we work and then bring it back to brands. And I feel the Australian scene is still so, I don't want to like say it's lacking completely because, it's starting to change, but how, with pursuing your own creative endeavors and making all these own opportunities, how have you found like working in the capacity with brands and collaborating and making it marketable and stuff?
I never work with any brands that I don't gel with completely. So I luckily haven't had any bad experiences where I'm like, oh, this is just not going to work. Most people and companies that I've worked with have been really receptive and wanting to do the right thing, and sometimes trying too hard to do the right thing. When they're like, and what do we call you? And we've had a team meeting. It's like, just chill. I'm just coming in. Just the drag queen at the moment, Joel. Yeah, I think as you were saying, we've been a lot of the company's first interactions with drag entertainers and performers to work with, but also we're also a different style of creator. Yeah. Whereas we're not just like, Sandra D, who's at the RSL doing bingo, coming in being like, hello, let me do some stuff with you. We come in with a bit more finesse and professionalism and creativity. So,
but very often they think that we're that style of drag queen off the hook because that's most people's experience with drag queens are a man in a dress, It's like they're like, oh, you're going to come in and do a drag bingo and talk about how you're a man in a dress and I'm a football player out of drag, and that's what they expect. And then I come in, looking like this, and they're like, oh, so you're not a joke to laugh at. Yeah. And sometimes you have to go, and it's not even in a negative way. Yeah. Sometimes they're just like, oh, that's what we thought drag queens were. We thought that, it was like a clown. And you've got to sometimes say, well, no, I am a bit more sophisticated than that because I am an event producer. I do all my own marketing. I'm a seamstress. I'm a wig stylist. I'm a makeup artist. I'm a performer. I'm a chef. I'm director, I don't know. I'm doing everything, And when you're hiring us, you're hiring in one person, team.
You have to fight for your worth. It's a lot of stuff just to walk out the door. So you have to know your worth. And that's a big thing with brands is talking to them, because they will expect you to do everything, but not in their brain think about that itemized. They just go, one figure done, beautiful. It's like, well, no, you're getting me to shoot this. You're getting me to edit it. You're getting me to style it. You're getting me to do all of these things. So,
and you're paying for my audience.
Yeah. So it's like,
which I've spent years built. Yeah.
But on top of a normal influencer who isn't a drag artist, we spend 3 to 4 hours more time, sometimes more, sometimes days and weeks more, because drag takes time and it takes a lot more money. And sometimes I have conversations with other influencers who are just, natural clean makeup, white tank top and a pair of jeans influencers. They'll do the same product placement as me. We'll get paid the same amount based on our following. And I go, I had to sew a dress. I had to style a wig. I had to pay someone to do those things for me. I had to do my makeup for hours. I have to put on a character and I have to act. You're paying for my visual identity, not just the way I normally look. And then you kind of go, so it's almost like I am doing two people's jobs. So I should be compensated for that.
You have to have those conversations with the brands and call them and be like, you really have to sell your worth in situations. And I think that's a tricky thing to navigate because, we hope that people just do the right thing in situations, but they're always going to it's a strategic game, this business.
Yeah, you definitely have to know your worth. And, the counter argument is like, well, someone else will do it for that price, so just do it. But then that is just being true to yourself to know that you are unique, you are individual, you are special. And look, it might not work for this one, but like as soon as you hold it, they might consider factor that in and then come back for the next campaign or the next year or the next thing. And that's happened to me with businesses before where I've been like, well, no, it's actually this. And they're like, look, this is the budget we have, so we can't. But they know and they like you and they appreciate you and they like what you're doing. So they do come back a lot of the time. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Even on a small scale in the drag scene with drag fees for performing, I've had lots of conversations about this with performers that are starting to get more experience and looking to move up in their, I suppose, just how they're considered in their career. And my biggest piece of advice for them is to raise their fees. And they always go, why? What will that do for me? And I say, the second that you raise your fee from, say, $200 a show to $400 a show, suddenly the shows that are paying $400 will be the ones that will start booking you. And you're already moving yourself up in a bracket mentally in your mind, and you're not worrying about the $200 shows. And you can always go and do one here and there, and it's nothing, but you're aiming at a different level of where you are professionally. It's
You're
changing
promoting
your mindset.
yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So when you
wow.
up your value, people see you as that value.
Whoa.
Like they're looking at you as that price, and they go, that's if they can't afford you, you're an aspirational person for them to book. Like they're like, this is someone that I want to be able to have the budget to book, not, oh, that person's too expensive. And that's how you've got to look at it. That's how we always look at it.
And I think it's really important to stop and have those moments of reflection so that when you approach those conversations, you can come to it with that understanding. That's where self-reflection in this business is so important. We really need to like stop, and that's a tool in itself to develop. I think we've talked a lot about like the anxieties and things we've had to overcome in the industry, but I want to take a moment for people, I don't know, to hopefully connect to, get inspired. And I wanted to know, I'll start with you, Etcetera. What part of your life right now is great? Like what are you grateful for, and what makes all this other stuff you have to go through worth it?
I'm really grateful for the details of what I do, and I've really started to enjoy that more. Like there's a store near my house where I live where they just sell buttons, and when no, don't laugh at me.
It's a sick shop.
When I go in then these days, or I go to like a fabric store or something, I just have learned such a new appreciation of my craft and what I do. Those small details and finding the perfect button brings me a lot of joy. And that way, when I put that amount of detail into what I do and care that much, when I'm presenting the final product, I'm so confident and happy and can embody what I'm delivering because I have brought joy down to those small elements. And we always talk about this. We're always finding the right thing. We're always trying to find the right thing that fits with our vision. And those small details are what creates a beautiful big picture. Gosh, like we are just magpies in a way. Like you hoard, Art has stock where she orders like, 100 of one thing so she doesn't run out for months. And that's what I learned from her. So I just order in bulk and things like that. The joy of being able to know your craft is why I like what I do.
I'm currently grateful for time and space because I drove myself into the ground for like 10 years, hard slog, bang, bang, bang. Even throughout COVID, when we were locked in our houses, I was like working out how I could work and do things. I was going to people's driveways and performing in their driveways. I created driveway drag shows throughout COVID because we couldn't do any events or parties. And a lot of my business at the time was like private events, hens, parties, birthdays, blah, blah, blah. So I would go to like someone's birthday and go and do a drag show in their driveway and like wish them happy birthday. I was like slogging it and I broke my foot at World Pride and it's still broken now, but it made me stop. And while I hated it to begin with, it's been really wonderful to sit back, to stop and to think and to like be human again for a little bit and to center myself and just to have space and realize that I don't need to be doing 1,000 things in 1 week. Because the thing that I found is now I get really excited to get into drag. I get really excited to go into work. If I step away from it, it also helps me remind myself what brought me to do it in the first place. So that's what I really enjoy at the moment. It actually makes me go back into my art form with like a freshness and an excitement and motivation. And I think that comes across more at the moment. So Yeah, except for the dance. They can't dance because of the broken foot.
You did the whole show on a broken foot during World
Yeah.
Pride, and I kept looking over at her, and she was smiling, but I could see one of her eyes just going.
Every time, like, I'd be facing the front and we'd do like a push turn, I'd be like,
Yeah.
What's the greatest piece of advice that you've ever been told, or one that resonates with you, or you always come back to? Etcetera.
I know
Okay.
exactly what it is.
My friend, my good dear friend who made most of the costumes that I wore on Drag Race and a lot of my costumes, Erin, she's one of my favorite people in the whole world, and she's a very grounding, calming, but also very cynical and sarcastic person. And when we were getting ready for Drag Race, obviously it was very stressful. It was during COVID, and there was a lot of things going wrong. You know, like at one point our visas weren't approved to enter the country like 24 hours from our flight. Like fabrics weren't arriving. Like we were all scared we were going to get COVID. I was like living in a state of constant anxiety. And I was on the FaceTime to her one day, and she said, you know what? Just remember, none of this will matter when you're dead.
Whoa.
And
So then when we're filming Drag Race, it's the infamous episode 2 where shit's going down. And I was like, I can't go home. I can't go home. And she looked at me and grabbed my hands and she said to me, none of this will matter when you're dead. And that stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, I've got this. And I went, they're going to eliminate it. But like, it like really resonated with me. But if you picture the visual though, she's there with a diving helmet on her head with this tiny little window just open. Yeah. I'm as a miserable sea wench with like shark teeth. And when she's holding it, she's like,
but it is good advice because
But it's stuck with me ever since.
It's
like,
good advice because it transports you. It's funny.
It pulls
It's
you out of
morbid,
it.
and it kind of
you look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, and it appeals to people like us who are sometimes we're not the most optimistic people. We're very like, okay, well, we need to fix the problem. And then sometimes problems are unfixable. And there's only one problem that is completely unfixable, and that is death. And I think we're both realistic enough to go, well, you know what? We'll move on. We'll wake up another day and we'll make it work another time. And we've got enough chances to try. And none of this, we're not going to be thinking about any of this in 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
Literally.
Like it's all in the past. And
so, we literally say it before every single show we do together.
Yeah.
We literally say it to each other all the time in chats when we're like, oh, this is happening, this is happening. None of this is better when you're dead, love. Don't worry. We're like, oh, okay, no, that's fine. It does like snap you out of it. It's great.
Yeah, it fully does.
That's why we're like so in sync. Like we weren't meant to be friends when we were on Drag Race. They wanted us to hate each other.
Yeah, I didn't expect this.
No, and they also didn't show it at all. But like we bonded extremely well during that weird experience, and they didn't air any of it. But they literally like cast us to be mortal enemies, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah. But you know what? If they didn't try,
You wouldn't have
we wouldn't have been friends, because the reason why we are friends is because I came up to her and I said to her,
on the first day.
yeah, they just asked me whether I think you're overrated and bad at drag. And I just want to let you know, I think they're trying to put us against each other. And she was like, okay, well, I trust you now.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, they're playing backfired, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe RuPaul was playing 3D chess. But I don't think so. I don't think so.
Nah.
And on that note, make sure if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, peace. Amazing. Thank you guys so much.
Oh my God, thank you. That was so fun.